So after the Kingdom Hearts series pivoted onto the handheld for Chain of Memories, anticipation was sky high for the true console follow-up to Kingdom Hearts. 2004 and 2005 was a mix of trailers and interviews revealing which characters were returning, what new Disney properties would join the franchise, and most importantly, how the gameplay would evolve. Now I watched and read every one of these articles with bated breath, counting down the days until release. And then young teenage Chris discovered a very terrible truth. See, Japan would get the game in December of 2005, while the States wouldn't get it until March of 2006. Now up to this point in my gaming career, I wasn't very conscious of video game release dates. I had no idea that most of these Japanese-made games would often release months, sometimes years between each other. And I really hadn't experienced that with the previous two games in the series, since I bought the first game at launch when it launched in the States, and I wrongfully thought Chain of Memories was skippable. Kingdom Hearts 2 was actually one of the first games I ever pre-ordered in my life. I pre-ordered it at Toys R Us, which is now a Target, and they used to give you these little, cards that were in, a rack by the registers, and you would take it and, I guess, put down some money for it. I think my parents did it. I was, again, too young to be conscious of what was going on, and I honestly don't remember what happened to the card, because once the game was in my hand, I couldn't have cared less. Trust me, it was a rough 3 months to get through. I remember shortly after the game launched in Japan, the soundtrack had gone online, and I downloaded it from FileFront. And then the advent of a little site called YouTube changed everything, as no more than a few weeks after the Japanese release, all of the cutscenes were uploaded. And again, stupid young Chris watched so much footage months beforehand. I read the comments and got spoiled and saw things that probably would have been better left seen on a first playthrough. Honestly though, seeing all this stuff really didn't affect how I enjoyed the game when I finally got it. In hindsight though, this taught me a valuable lesson about not seeking out clips from games when it could lead to spoilers. But, I was so desperate to play, and remember I'm 12 and very impatient at this point in my life. I legit replayed the first game so many times in the years between and discovered so many of the little secrets and hidden cutscenes, and I was so desperate to trigger the secret fight in Hollow Bastion even though it totally didn't exist in my version. But finally on March 28, 2006, the waiting was over. After what felt like 5 years instead of 3, I had the game in my hands. Was it everything I hoped it would be? Could it possibly live up to the hype that I created around it? How could it compare to the now 3 years worth of memories that I'd built up playing the first game over and over again? Well, we're gonna get to all that, but first, a plot summary. So please jump to the following timestamp to avoid spoilers, and I haven't even begun writing the summary as I type the sentence, but I bet it's going to be quite the time skip. So quick recap, and I do mean very quick, of where we last left our heroes. Sora, Donald, and Goofy were in the process of restoring their original memories prior to the events of Chain of Memories, thanks to Naminé. Meanwhile, Riku, having escaped the lingering call of Ansem's darkness, teamed up with Mickey and Diz to help Sora and start dealing with the remaining members of the organization. Now sure, it's way more detailed than all that, but every second counts in this recap for time. Rather than pick the plot back up with Sora, Kingdom Hearts 2 starts off with new character Roxas. Roxas lives in Twilight Town, the mysterious world Vexen seemed to hint had connections to the other side of Sora's heart. Roxas has also been having some weird dreams lately. Dreams mostly of the first Kingdom Hearts game. He lives in this eternally sunsetting metropolis alongside his friends Hayner, Pence, and Olette. And much like how Sora's world was home to several Final Fantasy character cameos, Roxas's is more of the same, as he has to deal with teenage versions of Cypher, Fusion, and Raj from Final Fantasy VIII. Oh, and Vivi from Final Fantasy IX is here, but completely and utterly wasted. He's the only representative of Final Fantasy IX in the entire series, which is one of my favorite Final Fantasies, and they gave him 8 lines and nothing to do. I know Vivi was quiet in Final Fantasy IX, but come on, you could have given him something. I like the design a lot here, but I'm just kind of let down by this. I feel like this is because Tetsuya Nomura didn't design the characters in 9, so maybe he doesn't feel comfortable with using them a lot. I remember he had issues with Setzer, who's also here, but he barely has any staying on the plot anyway. But I think he had things where he had to axe the guy who designed Setzer, because Nomura didn't design the characters in Final Fantasy VI, so I'm pretty sure that's why he mostly sticks to the characters he drew. Anyhow, Roxas' group is in the midst of trying to pass the last few days of summer vacation. This section is broken down into 6 days, with each day attempting to spell out the mystery as to who Roxas is and why we're suddenly playing as him. While the gang tries to figure out something to do, they soon learn that several photos of them have gone missing, along with the ability to say the word itself. A quick run around town, and Roxas encounters a white creature called a Dusk that apparently seems to be behind the strangeness. While trying to confront the creature, Roxas' toy bat turns into a Keyblade, allowing him to deal with the creature. The next day, the group is trying to earn money to go to the beach. They manage to get the money and let Roxas hold on to it, only for a man in a black coat to trip him and seemingly take it away. Strangely, none of Roxas' friends see the man in the coat. The third day, things start lining up more with the opening of the first game, in that Roxas encounters Naminé and is then taken away to the Station of Awakening, same as Sora once was. On the fourth day, Twilight Town's annual Struggle Contest takes place. It's a fighting tournament in which you smack around opponents with a very odd-looking bat and knock balls out of them to collect them and win. Disney was okay with that when they pitched that description. During the tournament, Roxas encounters Axel, who claims they used to work together for the organization. When it seems clear that Roxas doesn't have a clue who Axel is, he attacks him in an effort to jog his memory, in true JRPG fashion. After the fight, Diz arrives and tries to get Roxas to ignore Axel's statements, but before anything more can happen, Roxas snaps back to the tournament as if nothing had just occurred. Day 5 has the gang trying to finish their summer homework. Is that a thing in Japanese school? Homework over summer break? Because here in America, we finish the school year and teachers kind of recommend that you read like 3 books over the summer, but nobody does. Though oddly, the summer before I entered high school, the year before this game came out, I had to read the Tao of Pooh and write an essay on it. It was pretty interesting if I remember pieces of it. It was like looking at the Winnie the Pooh stories from a totally different angle. Anyway, for their assignment, they're investigating the 7 wonders of Twilight Town. Things that are seemingly out of place and don't follow any logic. For example, one of them is that there's more steps leading up to the train station than walking down, or how there's rumors that there's multiple versions of Vivi appearing in the sewers. The most interesting rumor, however, is about the abandoned mansion that's at the end of the woods, the very same mansion Sora and his friends fought Vexen in front of. The rumor is that a blonde-haired girl's ghost haunts the place. Now obviously this is just Naminé, and she has a conversation with Roxas about who he is and what exactly has been happening.
I guess I would like to know. What do you know about me that I don't?
You were never supposed to exist, Roxas.
What? How could you even say such a thing? Even if it were true.
I'm sorry. I guess some things really are better left unsaid.
And at this point, I'll just fully explain what's been going on the whole time. So it turns out that Roxas here is Sora's nobody. What's a nobody? Well, remember how in the first game the Heartless would just take a heart from a person? Well, a nobody is essentially the empty shell left behind when that happens. Now usually those shells turn into monsters like the Dusk from earlier, but strong hearts can retain their human form even as nobodies. Naminé explains that Roxas did work for the organization, now called Organization 13, because it's a way cooler title. Axel was his best friend during that time as well. However, Roxas was plagued with questions over why he had the Keyblade and who he really was, which caused him to abandon them. Now, the real, more detailed reason for this exodus would be explained 2 games from now, but we have to deal with what we've got for now. Roxas tried to leave, as I said, but he was attacked by a mysterious man in a black coat wearing a blindfold. This man defeated Roxas and brought him back to Diz. Now, why does Diz want Roxas? Well, you see, Roxas isn't really supposed to exist, and he's currently walking around with half of Sora's heart, which is sort of preventing Naminé from finishing the restoration of Sora's memory. So Diz has placed Roxas in this virtual Twilight Town to be kept safe until they're ready for him. Naturally, this explains all of the strange stuff that was happening to Roxas in the past few days. The words going missing, the strange wonders around the town, they're nothing more than glitches and faults emerging because the town's a simulation. The mysterious man who beat Roxas was also the man who stole the money on the second day, because they couldn't go to the beach since the fake town doesn't have that, so there's nowhere to go. This man has been helping Diz and is going by the name Ansem. Hell, he even looks exactly like Ansem from the first game, but how is that possible considering we killed him? The final day sees Axel revealing the leader of the organization has sent him personally to deal with Roxas since he betrayed and left them. He attempts to fight Roxas one more time, but Roxas, summoning his true abilities as a dual Keyblade wielder, stops him, leaving Axel to seemingly fade back into the darkness. Roxas confronts Diz about what he's done to him, but Diz ain't taking any of that because he doesn't care what happens to Roxas so long as Sora wakes up, since he kinda needs him to finish off the remaining members of the organization, whom he has a vendetta against. After a brief exchange, however, Roxas realizes he has to go back with Sora, and seemingly does so as we get our title card 3 hours into the opening. So finally, we are back with Sora and the gang, and naturally they're confused as to why they've just woken up in this strange room. They explore Twilight Town for a bit and come across the real Hayner Pensinolette, who tell them that King Mickey was just looking for them at the local train station. Once there, Mickey gives them money for the train and sends them off to the mysterious tower. And I'm not just saying that for dramatic effect, that's actually the name of this place. Before we head in, however, the gang encounters Pete, who turns out to have been off-screen in the first game working for Maleficent, unaware of what happened to her at the end of the last game. Before Pete can extract his revenge on us, the gang heads off into the tower to meet Yen Sid. Yen Sid in this game is an old Keyblade master who trained the king way back in the day. He quickly sums up the plot of the game and what the focus of the narrative will now be. You see, the Heartless are still running around since even closing the door to Kingdom Hearts at the end of the first game won't ever really get rid of them truly, since there's always going to be lingering darkness in people's hearts. However, there's now nobodies running around doing the bidding of Organization 13, whose true goal is sort of a mystery. Sora is intent on finding Mickey and Riku and returning them back home. Sora then gets a brand new outfit from the fairies from Sleeping Beauty, and boy did he need it because he really outgrew the Kingdom Hearts 1 attire. The group then heads off in the Gummy ship, and I already hear you saying, wait, Chris, didn't you say at the end of the first game summary that if we reset the world back to factory default settings, the Gummy ship would be useless because the worlds would all be walled off? Well, slight retcon. Yeah, now we can use the Keyblade to open up lanes in space to reach the world. Honestly, don't think too much about this because it really doesn't make any sense given how the explanation was handled in the first game. It's like they wanted it to be dramatic, and then they had to, of course, obviously change it because we obviously needed to visit new worlds, but it's whatever. However, before we can get control of Sora and the gang, we linger on the tower to see a raven approaching the tower with a strangely familiar black cloak. This is Diablo the Raven from Sleeping Beauty, and he's carrying Maleficent's robe. The fairies start to remember her, and by thought and extremely lame writing combined, Maleficent is back. At this point in the script, I should be writing a sentence like she's planning on getting her revenge on Sora and the gang, to leave you all in a state of suspense and wondering when she'll return. But screw that, because I'm going to tell you right now that Maleficent will do nothing not just for the rest of this game, but for the rest of the series going forward. Okay, I tell a lie, she kind of does one thing about halfway through this game, but then that's it. I really have no idea why Nomura brought her back to sideline her like this. There's no interesting plot developments with her, or any boss fights with her, so what the hell was the point? She doesn't even assemble like a new army of Disney villains at any point in the future titles, or in this game, so again, what was the point? Anyway, the gang makes their way back to Hollow Bastion, which is now being restored by the Final Fantasy crew, and they're doing one heck of a job. There's now a whole town next to the castle. After checking in on them, the remaining organization members make themselves known to Sora and tease him about the fact that he's already dealt with some of them, but is now kind of oblivious to that fact.
Why don't I remind you how tough the crowd you're dealing with really is?
Remind me?
It's at this point that the Disney worlds take over, and I'll be summing these up in a sentence or two because there's a ton more worlds in this game than the first, and if I give them all a heavy breakdown, this review's probably going to go over 2 to 3 hours. So first up is Land of Dragons, based on Mulan. Other than a quick reference to the fact that Mushu was a summon spell in the first game, this world plays out exactly like the plots of Mulan. Next up is Beast Castle, which we go to check on Belle and the Beast. The Beast has been acting a tad out of sorts because one of the organization members, Zaldin, has been convincing him that he should just give in to the darkness in his heart and abandon all his hope. We help out for a bit and Zaldin clears out of there. We then return to Olympus Coliseum, which now includes the underworld, so it's a much bigger level. We get Pete here trying to help Hades deal with Hercules. Since Hercules keeps defeating all of the opponents Hades sends at him, Pete makes this joke.
Say, why don't you just pick somebody already dead and save him the trouble?
Leading to Hades to summon the most badass character from Final Fantasy X, Auron, to fight him. Only to have Auron completely reject the offer, which I think is hysterical.
Did you forget who you're talking to? I am the Lord of the Dead!
No wonder no one wants to die.
I like that Auron is the guy he brings back, because this actually makes sense considering his story from Final Fantasy X. I wish more of the games in the series did stuff like this, where they kind of relate to what happened to them in their base game, but considering how half of the Final Fantasy characters are kids and teenagers, it doesn't really seem like that was the priority for them. Anyway, Auron and Sora team up to escape the underworld, because while we're here we can't hurt Hades since our strength is gone. We then reunite with Herc, Phil, and we meet Meg. Meg then gets captured while Hercules is fighting the Hydra, so Sora and the gang go to save her, and while they're on the way, they end up encountering another organization member, Demyx. Demyx here stole the Olympus Stone, which we kinda need in order to get our strength back so that we can beat Hades. After we deal with him, we battle Pete and rescue Meg. The day is saved, but the Coliseum is totally wrecked by the Hydra. Clearly Herc never watched Captain America. At this point, we switch over to Disney Castle, where Queen Minnie senses a disturbance in the Force and sends out a mental distress call to the party. Turns out Disney Castle's Cornerstone of Light is being surrounded by thorns and, I guess, evilness? So, the light might go out, and if it does, the castle can be invaded by the Heartless. Turns out, though, this is all a plot coming from Maleficent and Pete. Merlin comes to our aid and allows us to essentially time travel into Disney Castle's past to stop the trouble, since it turns out also that present-day Pete found a door into the past and is using it to destroy the Cornerstone. I'm only detailing what happens here in a little bit of detail since it's the most of the plot that Maleficent will engage in. Next up is Pirates of the Caribbean, where the gang mostly marvels at how they look next to realistic humans for once. Seriously, it's really bizarre when you see the color palettes between the two. Then we get returning trips to Atlantica, Agrabah, and Halloween Town. In Agrabah, we venture into a redesigned Cave of Wonders to find treasure, and in Halloween Town, we deal with a resurrected Oogie Boogie. How was he resurrected? Well, Maleficent saw to that, since I guess she might as well be doing something else plot-related. After that, the party reunites with Simba in the Pride Lands for a quick retelling of the second and final act of The Lion King, which I always found a tad of an awkward reunion since Simba's so happy to see us, and yet, dude, I never summoned you once in the last game. While the party's off at Disneyland, Axel, meanwhile, is trying to convince Kairi to come with him. Though, since she, like the player, isn't really sure what team Axel's batting for, she runs off with Pluto and ends up in Twilight Town, for all of about 5 seconds, until Axel comes and grabs her. I do like that Hayner and Pence try to fight him off, well, vaguely. Well, that just kinda just stands there, it's cute. Sora arrives one gummy ship route too late, and gets left dealing with organization member Saïx. Finally, we return to Hollow Bastion, since the Final Fantasy guys just discovered Ansem's computer, which surprisingly houses a level based on the movie Tron. It's kinda cool. Anyway, Sora widely assumes that the computer will tell him the location of Riku and the King, and then gets incredibly bummed out when it obviously can't. Sora, my guy, it's a computer, not a crystal ball, and unless Riku has a cell phone with GPS and Mickey's got one of those chip things in his ear, we can't exactly use a computer to find them. But it's all good, as it turns out King Mickey is here and is able to finally drop some much-needed exposition on us. He explains that he's been separated from Riku and has been searching for Ansem the Wise. Naturally, when Sora tries to reiterate that we kinda, killed him at the end of the first game, Mickey explains that that wasn't really Ansem, but rather a heartless person who went around calling himself that.
Well, the man in the picture is definitely the one who tried to take over Kingdom Hearts. The one you fellas defeated. But what you actually fought was his Heartless. You see, he wasn't really Ansem. He just went around telling everybody that he was.
As Mickey goes on to explain, it turns out that the real Ansem the Wise, had an apprentice named Xehanort who was obsessed with the mysteries of the Heart, Heartless, and Keyblade. 10 years prior, Xehanort, along with 6 of Ansem's apprentices, turned on him and sent him into the realm of darkness. Those 6 apprentices soon became the first 6 members of the organization after they all lost their hearts and became nobodies. Ansem from the first game was really Xehanort's Heartless, and his nobody, Xemnas, is currently leading the organization. At this point, the castle is assaulted by an army of Heartless, and everyone has to band together to stop them. Along the way to the source, the party re-encounter Demyx and put him out of commission. Oh, and then Goofy dies. No, I'm dead serious. He takes a rock to the head for Mickey, and that's it. He's gone. Mickey joins the party. It's Donald, Sora, Mickey. That's the rest of it. Okay, of course not. Goofy doesn't die. Okay, A, Disney would never allow one of their main animated characters to ever die. And B, Goofy, my dude, has been crushed, bashed, impaled, electric shocked, and 100 other things over the years. Hell, he even makes a joke about it when he comes back that happens to him. I get what they were trying to do, but no, don't try that with the Disney characters. Do it with the regular Kingdom Hearts characters, or even like some of the Final Fantasy characters if you want to. I don't think anyone's really nervous that the Disney characters are ever gonna die. Sora and crew then make their way to the edge of the cliff and encounter Saïx, who reveals the organization's true goal at long last.
Pitiful Heartless, mindlessly collecting hearts. And yet, they know not the true power of what they hold. The rage of the Keyblade releases those hearts. They gather in darkness, masterless and free, until they weave together to make Kingdom Hearts. And when that time comes, we can truly, finally exist.
So yeah, every time Sora's been attacking the Heartless, he's essentially freeing a heart that's helping the organization. Then Maleficent shows up for no reason and helps us escape for really no reason, and in her words, she'll deal with us later. Well, I've been waiting 20 years and she still hasn't. She then sends us to the Void and we get a gift box from another member of the organization whose face we don't see. Sora has a short mental breakdown over whether he shouldn't use the Keyblade anymore, but then 2 minutes pass and he's back to his senses. From this point on, we revisit the Disney World, and I'm gonna have to sum this up even faster because I already know by now we've hit the 30-minute mark, so let's blow through this real fast. Okay, everybody ready? Here we go. So in Land of Dragons, we help Mulan fight a Heartless set loose by Xigbar, and we think Riku might be helping us. Beast Castle, Xaldin interrupts Beast Date Night, so we kill him. Olympus Coliseum, Herc is still bummed out at letting the place get trashed, so we join a tournament in the underworld, and he gets his mojo back. Porel introduces us to Organization Gambler Man Luxord into the fold as he starts taking the medallions out of the chest from the movie, and then it has us chasing him down. Agrabah is the plot from Return of Jafar. Halloween Town has us chasing down an experiment that got loose from Dr. Finkelstein, and finally the Pride Line is being haunted by Scar's ghost. Whew, okay, that wasn't that bad. Finally, at long last, we're getting ready for the endgame. The party returns to Twilight Town and teams up with Hayner, Pence, and Olette to find the entrance to the digital Twilight Town. We manage it and enter the Matrix, which seems to have a portal rift thing leading straight into the organization's home base, the world that never was. But while in the Void, we get ambushed by nobodies, and Axel reappears to lend us a hand before sacrificing himself so we can get away. And we finally learn at long last who Axel really was trying to help.
Axel, what were you trying to do?
I wanted to see Roxas. He was the only one I liked. He made me feel like I had a heart.
We reach the world that never was, and before long, Sora enters an eternal battle against Roxas, in which Roxas seems to accept that Sora is his nobody and allows him to go on. Once we enter the castle, we deal with Xigbar, Saïx, and Luxord, leaving only Xemnas left. Mickey then runs up ahead and meets up with Diz, who turns out to be the real Ansem. The two then head up to the top of the castle to stop Xemnas from creating Kingdom Hearts, a collection of all the hearts freed by the Heartless killed by Sora. Before that, though, we learn that the man calling himself Ansem from the start of the game is really Riku. Turns out Riku was the one who fought Roxas on orders from the real Ansem so that they could put him back with Sora after the events of Chain of Memories. However, Riku kinda got his ass kicked and needed to tap into his inner darkness, and when he did that, it changed his appearance to Ansem. Riku then gives Kairi her own Keyblade. Don't ask how she's wielding that, that's a question for another game, and the three race up to find Mickey and Ansem. They arrive just as Ansem's machine starts messing up Kingdom Hearts, but draws the attention of Xemnas. The machine ends up exploding, and Ansem is killed, and Riku is changed back into his original appearance. Oh yeah, and Maleficent and Peter here, trying to take over the castle, because I guess the rent in Hollow Bastion is insane and they can't make payments. Regardless, they help us for no real reason, I think so that we can go deal with Xemnas, but I mean, it's such a waste. At long last, we reach the top and battle Xemnas in the final fight. We successfully take him out, and Roxas and Naminé return only for a brief moment to refuse with Sora and Kairi. But the day is not saved, as Xemnas turns the castle into a Megazord from Power Rangers and chases Riku and Sora while the rest of the group escape. After the real final fight, Riku and Sora are then trapped in the Realm of Darkness. Thankfully, though, they are saved by a letter that Kairi sent off from the Destiny Islands earlier in the game, and ironically, in some sort of coming full circle message, it's actually the intro text from the first Kingdom Hearts opening menu. At long last, Sora, Riku, and Kairi are home and ready to enjoy a much-needed rest. Or do they? Cut to the first post-credit scene, and it turns out Mickey has sent another letter promising yet another adventure for our heroes. And there you have it, the plot of Kingdom Hearts 2. It's a beast. So, overall, what do I think? Well, it has its moments, but I still view it as a bit of a letdown in comparison to the first game. Okay, that kind of sounds like I hate it, so I think I'll talk about what bugs me about the story before I say what I like. So, first I have issues with the story, since the purpose of visiting the Disney worlds is kinda hollow in comparison to the first adventure. Last time we were taking out Maleficent's minions and trying to find Riku and Kairi in addition to sealing keyholes, and it was simple, but a great motivating plot device. This time it feels like we're just stopping by the Disney worlds for no real reason. Like in each world, Sora tends to ask the characters if anyone's seen Riku and Mickey, but like, why would they be chilling with Aladdin and Hercules, you know what I mean? And I get it, what were the odds Riku and Kairi were in the Disney worlds in the first game? But we still had the seal the keyhole objective to fall back on. However, Kingdom Hearts 2 removes the whole sealing the keyhole bit as the objective. This time we're just stopping by the worlds to find out where Riku and Mickey are, and occasionally stopping Organization 13 if they happen to be there. But as you just learned from that giant plot dump, the Organization isn't bothering every world we visit. In fact, the Organization only really appears in 4 of the Disney worlds, but to different extents. Like, Demyx popping up in Olympus and Xigbar popping up in Land of Dragons are cameos at best. Like, the Organization should have been causing trouble in most of the Disney worlds, or the Disney villains should have teamed up again to cause trouble. And look, I get it, we need to visit the Disney worlds because it's a video game and we need levels, but there needs to be a stronger reason for it. Now, I like the Organization as the main antagonist, and they work a lot better than the Heartless did since they're people with agendas and motives and, you know, they can talk. However, most of them are kinda wasted here, with only Axel, Xigbar, and Saïx really contributing. Luxord, Demyx, and Xaldin are kinda wasted. They show up once or twice, and I feel like they were given one character trait to try to justify that short screen time. So Demyx is the stupid one, Luxord likes gambling, and so on. The final mix version of this game adds a lot more cutscenes with the other members of the Organization, which kinda helps. It doesn't feel as hollow as the original did, but it still feels like an issue. Thankfully though, later games in the series fixed this. But back when the game first released, I felt like this was a big missed opportunity. Speaking of missed opportunities, if it wasn't apparent by how I side tangent in the plot summary, Maleficent. They bring her back, and you probably think she's just going to form another legion of Disney villains, and there's going to be some sort of rematch in the late game. But nope, she just pops up occasionally, says she wants us dead, and does nothing. I was so let down by the fact that you don't even fight her in the game. Seriously, you could cut Maleficent completely out of the plot and nothing would change. Replace her with the Organization members trying to destroy the Cornerstone, and literally it would be the same thing. I also want to bring up the fact that you had to play Chain of Memories before playing this, regardless of how the developers back in the day said you could have totally skipped it. Though I think I understand as to why they said this. You see, Sora and the gang have absolutely no clue what happened in Chain of Memories, and by the end of this game, they still don't remember what happened, since, Naminé did that whole restore their memories before they entered the castle. Even though the message Jiminy wrote in his journal was still there after they woke up, which makes me wonder why they didn't just write a quick sum-up of important things that happened, like saying, "Hey, future Sora, Donald and Goofy, you guys encountered these people from something called the Organization, and they tried to kill Sora and turn him into their puppet. You defeated some of them, but there might be more, so watch it." I guess the developers felt like if the player hadn't played Chain of Memories, they were kinda just like Sora, oblivious to what transpired. Only the plot doesn't pretend that Chain of Memories didn't happen. It alludes to it a lot, and without knowledge of that title, you might have no idea why Axel is betraying the Organization from the start, who Diz is, how he met up with Riku. Hell, not playing Chain of Memories means you probably thought Riku was still stuck on the other side of the Kingdom Hearts door with Mickey this whole time. And that in turn is why revisiting the Disney World and using the carrot on the stick of "we might find Riku here" is weak, because we know what happened to him because we all played Chain of Memories. Only if you didn't, then you wouldn't know, and there was a slight chance that maybe Riku was hanging out with Aladdin and Jack Sparrow, but I still think it's kind of a stretch. Alright, let's get into some of the stuff that I did like. Definitely one of the biggest things that I liked was the new additions to the lore. So the first game played around with the heart, the second game played around with memory, and this game plays around with what happens to that empty body after the heart gets taken, in regards to the shell that gets left behind. The creation of nobodies was introduced as sort of a parallel to the Heartless, and I like that. Even their logo is a splintered upside-down heart, which I think is actually kind of cool from a design standpoint. I think it's also really an interesting way to spin it. If a person doesn't have a heart, how do you feel? Is it possible to have emotions without a heart? And that's what makes the Organization hard characters to write down, because you can't give them emotions because technically they're not supposed to feel, but they also kind of remember their feelings, so it's definitely a gray area you can play around with. King Mickey is also another great addition, now that he actually has a bearing on the plot, which, again, I totally understand why it didn't happen the first time. It was a technicality that they couldn't use him, but obviously once Kingdom Hearts became a huge success, the floodgates were open, and Disney let Square do whatever they want. So naturally the first thing Nomura did was redesign him into an athlete with more zippers than God intended. It's finally nice to see him taking part in the action versus being off screen for, 99.5% of the runtime, even if it was for a legal reason. He's off doing his own thing for some of this game, but we see him a lot more, and he hangs us with us for the finale this time. I also like the addition of Diz, or rather the real Ansem the Wise. I like his tragic backstory and how he was chucked in the realm of darkness by his apprentices, which, side note, spoiler alert here, but in all the games preceding this point, we never actually see that. It's only ever been in text or alluded to. It's never shown outright, which I don't like, but maybe they're waiting for like a later game to show it. I can't talk more about it without getting into heavy spoilers, but I'll bring it up again when I want to, or when I'm allowed to be with the spoilers. But regardless, Ansem is a really cool character, definitely the most layered character second to Riku, in that he's not really a totally good guy or bad guy. He wants revenge on the Organization for what they did to him, so he legit uses everybody else in the plot. He uses Naminé, Riku, Roxas, and Sora all to his advantage to enact this behind-the-scenes revenge plot. I don't love that Kairi has to stay on the Destiny Islands for most of the game, although I do like that she pops up near the end and she gets a Keyblade, even though they didn't explain how she was able to use the Keyblade for a couple of games, but I'll let it slide. And Riku got a really good character arc since it brought his main storyline to a close. He was so tempted by the darkness and strayed so far from the light by the end of the first game that he had to confront the sins of his past during his stay in Castle Oblivion. And now he's holding both the dark and light in check to make amends and help Sora regardless of the sacrifices he has to make. He legit takes on the appearance of the fake Ansem and is totally cool with it, knowing his actions will help Sora in the long run. Like I said, the lore was greatly expanded here, and honestly this is where people started getting confused and saying that the series had kinda gone off the deep end. Personally, I never felt that Kingdom Hearts 2 went that far, unlike a later game in the series that we'll talk about when we get there. However, one scene in the game totally changed the way I see the complexities of this series, and similar scenes have actually played out in the following games, and I'll try to point them out where I can. And this would be the scene when Mickey explains the Ansem plot twist from the first game, and Sora has this reaction.
Don't tell me there's more. I'm lost enough as it is.
Sora up until this point could not have been a closer stand-in for the player. He doesn't understand this, he never tries to act like he does, and I will always appreciate a series when the main characters will poke fun at how silly it all can be. I can't stand it when I'm playing a game with a convoluted plot and all the characters are just okay with things, not questioning important things that need to be questioned, or bringing up any sort of concerns. Ironically, this would start happening in a ton of future Final Fantasy games after this point, but surprisingly, Kingdom Hearts has never really fallen into that trap, as convoluted as it gets. I'm sure the writers know the audience is kinda mostly young kids and now older adults, but I've always respected that in a game with Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck, the plot has never really played down to kids. The writing has always felt like Final Fantasy adjacent. Or I should probably say Final Fantasy adjacent in the 90s and early 2000s, not modern day Final Fantasy, because that's a whole other story. I also like how Kingdom Hearts 2 wrapped up the plot nicely. It kind of felt like the end, even though it's obviously not, and no, they hadn't planned it to end here, but there's a sort of closed book feeling at the end of this one. Kingdom Hearts 1 ended with a cliffhanger, and there was a ton of questions. There was the whole fact that we were separated from Kairi, she was back home on the Destiny Islands, Riku and Mickey were on the other side of the Door to Darkness, and Sora and the gang were running in a field after Pluto going God knows where. Then the Secret Ending movie only added fuel to that fire with new characters, weird-looking Heartless, this weird futuristic cityscape, and what looked like an older Kairi. Then Chain of Memories was nothing but a giant tease setting up Kingdom Hearts 2, showing us Twilight Town and insinuating about Roxas, along with setting up the other half of the organization members as remaining pieces on the board. In some ways, Kingdom Hearts, Chain of Memories, and Kingdom Hearts 2 make up a trilogy of sorts. Even if Chain of Memories is more of a bridge title linking the two games together than having a Roman numeral, which is again I guess why some people get confused about the naming conventions, like if Chain of Memories is so important then why doesn't it have a number? Kingdom Hearts 2 leaves you with a little bit of a cliffhanger, but it's a much more subdued one. Yeah, we beat the bad guys, Xemnas is destroyed and the day is saved. Sora and Riku return home to Kairi, they share a nice firm handshake, which pissed me and the entire fanbase off back in 2006, and that's it. The only lingering plot thread is how in the post-credit scene we see that Mickey has once again sent a letter calling our heroes back into the fray, which to me didn't scream, oh my god, there's going to be another game, but more like they're leaving the door open to potentially come back in the future. But at the moment, nothing about Kingdom Hearts 2 plot screamed sequel. The Disney crew goes back to Disney Castle, Mickey and Minnie are reunited, the Destiny Island gang's all back together. I mean, story's over, isn't it? There's no more bad guy, Heartless Xehanort's dead, the nobody's gone. I mean, what's really left to deal with? Well, the Secret Ending movie was what left some of the lingering questions. So there's actually two versions of this video. First, there's the short teaser Secret Ending from the original vanilla Kingdom Hearts 2, and then there's the final mix trailer, which was longer, more badass, and answered a few more questions from the teaser. So the teaser showed the Ansem report scrolling across the screen before eventually settling on this weird-looking desert plain with a million Keyblades thrown into the ground, and then 3 armored Keyblade wielders walking into the distance before seeing something coming out of the shadows. It was vague to say the least, but the one thing that made it very clear was that this was going to be some kind of prequel. It seemed to be talking about the one thing that the series had been dropping hints at vaguely, the fact that there were other Keyblade wielders long before Sora and Riku. King Triton had mentioned something about key bearers, and Xigbar specifically mentioned that Sora wasn't at all like the others, which clearly established himself as knowing other Keyblade wielders. So this video had to be set in the past, which made sense. I mean, where we are right now story-wise, there's not really a whole lot of room to go, so backwards might be the only answer, and hell, there's a whole backstory of the series that we don't know much about. They've talked about this Keyblade War, the fight for the light that ended up putting Kingdom Hearts out of reach and drowning the world in darkness, so maybe that's what this video's teasing. Now, the secret movie from Kingdom Hearts 2, Final Mix, is more elaborate, like I said, showing who all these characters were in the teaser. And so the questions began. Who's this old ball guy who at first glance looks like he's just your generic ball bad guy, but his outfit looks eerily similar to what Ansem wore in the first game? I mean, he's clearly not Ansem, and who's the guy next to him? He looks like he's wearing a mock-up of Riku's weird purple outfit in the first Kingdom Hearts game. And then these 3 Keyblade wielders. There's a girl, a guy in ice who kinda looks a hell of a lot like Roxas, and then there's the final guy whose eyes are turning yellow, which usually means something Heartless related. So, what's the hell this all about? No one really knew what was going on, and it would be a very long time before all the pieces started falling into place, but like I said here, the tease for what was next seemed like it was hinting at a prequel. I still feel like Kingdom Hearts 2's ending is very complete. The bad guys are dealt with, friends are reunited, and we all go home happy. So I didn't really see the need for Kingdom Hearts 3 right away. And skipping ahead, Kingdom Hearts 3 wouldn't be announced for another 7 years, but it would take another 2 games and 4 years until the plot leading to that game would even be established. Overall, I was content with where Kingdom Hearts 2 ended, and generally felt the plot was decent. It had its shortcomings, though, as we'll see, later games tried to fix some of the issues that I took with it. Now moving on to the gameplay, the core gameplay design of the first Kingdom Hearts game is thankfully left intact here, with several additions adding to that structure. Yes, thankfully the card-based battle system of Chain of Memories is long gone, and we are back to the same real-time combat of the first title. You still equip Keyblades, armor, accessories, and items to Sora, Donald, and Goofy, much like before. You still learn abilities, though the game has slightly changed how that works. In the first game, you received certain bonuses when you leveled up. It swapped between HP, defense, strength, and the occasional ability. This still happens here, though in 2, most of the abilities are now rewards when you defeat bosses or hit certain story events and worlds. This essentially now gates you from over-leveling and gaining access to a ton of abilities in the early game. You still have ground combos and air combos, though Sora is much more nimble than last time, so it's easy to launch into either the air and change it up midway through. Also, now pressing square at certain points during a combo will allow Sora to attack with another move, allowing for much longer combos than anything we saw in the first game. Sora still learns magic, though several new spells have replaced some from the first game. Gone is Stop and Aerial, and this time we get Reflect and Magnet. Reflect is good to shield yourself if you're struggling with the guard ability, and Magnet will draw enemies to you to let you hit multiple at once. I should also bring up that Cure works differently now. I suppose in an effort to keep Donald and Goofy alive more often, all of the Cure spells are now Area of Effect spells. The trade-off for this is that all levels of the Cure spell now drain the MP bar completely. However, to compensate for that, the bar now will regenerate back on its own. Now, Kingdom Hearts didn't have a ton of alternate combat avenues for you to take. It was just standard attacks, magic, and the occasional ability, in addition to if you wanted to use summon spells, which I'm sure very few people did. Summoning returns, and this time you get Genie, Peter Pan, Stitch, and Chicken Little. They're again not really necessary to use at any point, however, an area in Olympus makes use of them in the tournaments, so they're not as neglected as last time. Also, if you want to get access to some of the later tournaments, you need to level up the summoning gauge in order to access it, which I think is kind of stupid, but at least you're getting to use the summons for some other reason. Sora can now also do more cooperative attacks with Donald, Goofy, and the rest of his Disney pals under the form of limits. These crazy team-up attacks only last a short time, but they can make short work of enemies and bosses. I guess I should also mention here that you no longer have to reach a save point to change party members. The new command menu now flips to a second page, which allows you to pull party members out at any time. The game also has reaction commands during fights. During certain boss fights, you might be prompted to hit the triangle button to perform a cool context move that will in most cases either stun the boss or damage them. You never really know when these are going to pop up, so you kind of have to be aware. Though thankfully these are never required, or you'll be forced to do one to complete a boss fight. The biggest change up to the combat are the drive forms. These forms give Sora new costumes and powers. Sora now has a drive gauge alongside his health and MP bar. Throughout the game you gain access to different drive forms. Now, not only do you have to have the proper gauge level to use them, but you also lose a party member in exchange for the new power. Valor form has you losing Goofy, but Sora gains access to High Jump and a second Keyblade, allowing for a whole slew of new combat moves. Wisdom form has you losing Donald, but you get more powerful magic, but you also lose the ability to attack with the Keyblade itself. You just shoot things from it. You also get the ability Air Slide here, which replaced Dodge Roll, at least in the original Kingdom Hearts 2. Dodge Roll was removed completely as an ability in that version, and was used instead as a reaction command to these Bomb Heartless. I'll explain more about that in just a second, though. Next up is Master Form, and for this you lose both party members, gain a second Keyblade, and have access to even crazier combos, and the ability to aerial dodge, which lets projectiles bounce off Sora if they connect while he does the move. The last form is Final Form, and this also removes both party members and gives you two Keyblades, but it greatly increases both attacks and magic, and lets you glide. The moves that go along with each form have essentially replaced learning the shared abilities from the first game, and I'll explain more about that when we talk about the exploration this time. Now there's two more forms, one of which is something that randomly happens, and the other is only found in the final mix version of the game, not the original. The random form is Anti-Form, which triggers if you take a ton of damage before you try to change into a form. This turns Sora into a Heartless and gives you no magic or abilities, just a standard desperation attack that does a ton of damage, but like I just said, there's no way to heal or use items in this form, and you can't cancel out of it. You have to wait until the drive bar just ends. Also, you gain no experience when you kill things with Anti-Form, so while it looks really cool, it's not really practical if you want to level up. The final mix exclusive form is Limit Form, and this form puts Sora back in his Kingdom Hearts 1 attire and gives him a collection of abilities from that game, like Sonic Blade and Ragnarok. The ability Sora learns with this form is Dodge Roll, since Square realized their mistake by cutting it out of the original. Seriously, people were not happy it was gone, and I was one of them. The last addition to combat is kind of a secret, and honestly it's possible to completely miss. At certain boss fights in the game, should Sora be killed, the game will present you with a choice to either give up or try again. Choosing to try again will put you in the shoes of King Mickey himself. He has a pretty sick combo if you can get it going, and he takes massive amounts of damage off bosses' health bars. However, he can't finish them off. I probably should have mentioned that in this game, in order to finish off a boss, you have to do a 3-hit combo that finishes the combo, and Mickey doesn't have that, so you can't kill anything with him. So what you're supposed to do with Mickey is use the triangle command to bring Sora back to life. However, even if you don't do this, Mickey will still heal Sora and have him come back, just not at full health. Exploring the Disney worlds has also gone under some revision, and not to my liking. In Kingdom Hearts, there was a lot of incentive to explore every inch of the worlds. There were the Trinity markers that were hidden around, the chests that were littered all over the place. True, there was no way to check how many were in each level, which was kind of annoying, but it was fun to go out and find them, even if half of them had those useless gummy blocks and the other half had the poor Dalmatians trying to breathe. Though it made it much more exciting when you found a weapon or a status item. There were the shortcuts around the levels that you could stumble upon, like the secret path back to Ariel's Grotto, or the optional paths around Halloween Town. And a big design element of that exploration was using the shared abilities to help you navigate better. Reach higher ledges or glide to far-off sections that were out of reach earlier. So now in Kingdom Hearts 2, the levels are bigger and still have chests, which now get accounted for in the journal, but that's it. There's no trinities or secrets, and all the chests are obtainable from the start, no need to go back and revisit later. That's because shared abilities are now tied to leveling up your drive forms. Once every few level up, Sora will learn an ability like High Jump or Glide. However, in the original Kingdom Hearts 2, these abilities were solely for a cool aesthetic and had no practical use. Thankfully, Final Mix adds the Cavern of Remembrance, which acts as a mini-zone where you have to use these abilities to make progress. The base game never required them since there would be no way to track which form you were using or how often you were using it, so placing a required moment where, say, High Jump was mandatory to make progress, it would impede your progress. See, the last time shared abilities were given at certain points in the story, which meant that any world post-Monstro could have a high jump platform because it knew that you were going to get access to high jump in that world. You couldn't leave Monstro without it. Well, I mean, you could, but then you wouldn't be able to do anything in the later half of the game, so you would need it. But for Kingdom Hearts 2, say a level like Port Royal has a section where you would need high jump, well, the game isn't going to know if you've been using Valor form, so you would now have to grind out the form to get the ability. And that would just break the pacing. Now, using Glide and High Jump in the original Kingdom Hearts 2 is great to zip around the bigger levels, but there was no practical use. These abilities are not used to get chests, since like I said, you can grab them all without them, and there's no more Trinities to find. Though Final Mix did add the crown stickers, which allows you to find these glowing crowns in all of the levels, and it helps you make pictures inside of the menu in Jiminy's journal. And these are easy to get by just walking into them, but some of them are in out-of-place areas that require the abilities, so it gives them a little bit more purpose. But like I said, Final Mix has the Cavern of Remembrance, which fixes this issue in spades. This area opens up midway through the game, which means you should have some of the drive forms leveled up, but you probably won't survive long in here anyway, as the battle level is quite high, even at the point when it opens up to you. Also, you'll pretty much need the drive forms level up to max, and the game gates when you can level them, so you'll have to wait to upgrade the drive gauge before you're able to level them up further. For the most part, it's cool that this place now exists because it gives the form a reason to be used versus in the original game where they were just there to make you look cool. And I guess I should now talk about whether or not they fixed the issue of the poor design in some of the Disney worlds. So if you remember, Kingdom Hearts had a terrible issue of sending you to the next objective. I'm looking at you, Deep Jungle in Atlantica. Well, I've got good news, and I've got bad news. The good news is that there's absolutely no issue of getting lost from the objective in Kingdom Hearts 2. The bad news is that that's because the game now treats you like a small child and won't let you get lost even if you wanted to. See, now the game has two other changes to guarantee that you won't get lost. The first is that in certain areas, your party will be walking around all casual-like, and you can talk to them similar to what you could do in Castle Oblivion with Donald and Goofy. However, now they tell you where you should be going and what you should be doing, and in case that expositional text wasn't easy enough to read, they full-on Nintendo'd it by having the objective flash in colors. And now I hear you saying, oh, well, that's pretty lame, but hey, just don't talk to them and it'll be fine. Well, the developers must have heard you, since even if you don't talk to them and attempt to go off the path and explore the game, it now blocks you should you attempt to go somewhere they don't want you going. And this happens all throughout the game, and I hate this because all I wanted was more of a streamlined structure to getting to the next objective rather than searching blindly like in the last game. What I didn't want was the game to hold my hand and treat me like an idiot, and that's what this feels like. All the first game needed was a few lines of text to explain what to do and where to go. Again, what I didn't need was the game yelling at me where to go and then blocking off all the other options until I managed to go the one correct way. Another little nitpick that I'm not really sure where to bring up is that the game has way too many unwinnable fights. These are moments where during a fight the game will pull you out of it just because you're not supposed to win. This happens early after you first get control of Sora, and this one kind of makes sense since we did just wake up from a long sleep and we lost all of our abilities, and again this happens in the Underworld because the party's powers are locked, but far too often you'll start a fight with Heartless or Nobodies, and then after a few seconds or too many hits, the game pulls you out of it. Like, why can't they just have me keep going until I die, or hell, until more enemies pour in? As I mentioned in the plot dump, the Gummy Ship returns, and it's completely redesigned from the first game. Whereas the first game had you slowly crawling to the next world, with the only challenge coming from, not falling asleep at the controller before you reached it, Kingdom Hearts 2 tries a lot harder to make the Gummy Ship more interesting. Each route is now more action-packed with tons of enemies, and it plays out more like an old-school arcade spaceship shooter. You still play on rails, but there's a lot more dynamic movement, and the camera will automatically shift to another direction when new enemies pop in. You only have to complete the route once, so if you really hate the gummy ship, you don't have to devote a ton of time to this. The first time through a route, the goal is just not to die while collecting orbs to raise your rank. If you want to come back, there's 2 more missions that open up on each path. The second has you now trying to destroy a set number of enemies to get a letter grade, and the third mission is now a super harder version of the second, only this time you have to control the camera manually. Other new additions here is that each ship comes with standard guns and missiles, and some models even have 2 little tiny ships to fly alongside to help you out. Some routes even have boss ships that you have to dodge around and blast to take out before the route finishes. There's a lot to dive into compared to the first game, even with the mission mode that was tacked onto Final Mix. You can go back with special ships and try to unlock new items for your ship to use, or reach the max X rank on each mission. Once again, you can design your own ship, with the interface being a lot more user-friendly than the last time. The content is there for the gummy ship, and thankfully Kingdom Hearts 2 never forces you to really engage in it, allowing you to choose how much time you spend in subspace. I think the gummy ship here is a lot better. For one, it's more action-oriented than anything in Kingdom Hearts was, and the game even lets you tackle multiple routes at any given time, so you can knock them out of the way before going to the next world. So I never really felt like the gummy ship missions here were a big drag like it was in the first game. Trust me, I never dreaded doing the gummy ship here like I did in the first game. Okay, so now I guess it's time to talk about Atlantica, because I didn't really mention it in the story, and that's because Atlantica doesn't really function like a normal world. Instead, it's now a minigame level similar in style to the 100 Acre Wood. Since I guess people weren't big fans of the combat in Atlantica from the first game, they've removed the Heartless from this world. Yep, somehow they just don't want to go there anymore, although considering what we're doing here, I honestly don't blame them. There's no logical reason for why they're not here, they just don't show up, and so now the world is broken up into 5 chapters where each episode plays off of a part of retelling the Little Mermaid movie, which was only briefly touched upon in the last game. Now the whole plot's there, from Ariel getting legs to meeting Prince Eric, but the focus on the film's plot causes some continuity confusions. So when we first land here, Ariel and Sebastian recognize us, and Donald mentions that we're under the sea again, which clearly reinforces the fact that we're visiting after the events of the first game. Now I know how crazy that last sentence sounds, but please bear with me. Yet, despite this being a sequel, Ursula's back. Now most of the villains from the first game return, but there's usually a reason for it, excluding, the bullshit reason that Maleficent came back. Hades didn't die, he ran off. Also, he's the Lord of the Dead, so I don't think you can kill Death. Jafar was stuck in the lamp, Oogie Boogie shows up in Halloween Town, but like I said, Maleficent brought him back, and Captain Hook isn't in this game, but he's probably alive because he ran away from the crocodile. Which leaves Ursula as the last villain, but she died. We killed her pretty defiantly, if you look at it. I mean, she disappeared in an explosion, and I don't think she's walking away from that anytime soon. And hell, even more confusing to this is that in the chapter in which she does reappear, Ariel seems to act like she's never met her before by saying, "Oh, you're Ursula the Sea Witch." Well, yeah, shouldn't you know her? This woman stole your father's Triton not, 1 year ago? Well, is it a year? I mean, we were asleep for a year, but how does time work in the Disney world? No, I don't want to know, because that's probably even a more crazy explanation coming from Nomura. They don't even say that Maleficent brought her back. She's just back because they needed her, and I never liked this. I felt like this was so cheap. It's like they wanted to do the Little Mermaid plotline, but they all knew they needed Ursula for any of it to make sense, so they had to bring her back just to say, "Oh look, she's back." And look, I get it. Cartoon villains often do this thing where a villain will probably be dispatched in one episode and come back next week, but they're usually not shown dying in an extreme circumstance like she was. Plot inconsistencies aside, let's talk about what we're actually doing here. Each chapter, like I said, is a musical episode which has you tapping the button out Guitar Hero style to the beat of several songs, although it's not really to the beat, it's more like to the actions that the dancers are doing in the song. Ironically, this whole level will now become a precursor to what will eventually become Melody of Memory many years later. Side note, it's much better in that game. Each chapter has a song, so there's only 5, however they only used 2 songs from the movie, and they made up 3 new ones. And no offense to whoever wrote the new songs, but yikes. They sound terrible in English, God knows what they sounded like in Japanese, and in another misstep, they gave Ursula her own new villain song instead of using Poor Unfortunate Souls, which I mean, it was right there. Like, come on. Now I gotta hear a song where Ursula uses the word poopsies multiple times, and mind you, and free tip to any aspiring songwriters out there, you never really want to use the word poopsies in a song. When I replay Kingdom Hearts 2, I tend to skip Atlantica until the very end because you can't do it all in one sitting, and that's probably the most annoying part about it. It's broken up, like I said, into those 5 chapters, which require different things to trigger the next part. Things that make no friggin' sense. Like, one part ends because you don't have access to a stronger magnet spell, and you need to get a locket that floats in between some rocks. Even though Sora should be able to stick his frickin' hand in there, or hell, here's an idea, why don't you use one of your crazy Keyblade combos and blast the thing into oblivion? Sometimes you need to read a piece of complex music, and because your drive gauge isn't at the right level, you have to leave. I don't understand how the ability to harness super fighting clothing moves allow you to read music, but then again, I only ever took basic piano in the 6th grade, so what do I know? Like, Jesus Christ, it doesn't make sense. So yeah, I just wait to get all the requirements, and then I just sit through it at the end. And of course, I hear people saying, Chris, if you don't like the level, and you said it doesn't have to be completed until you hit the credits, why torture yourself? Well, clearly the developers thought of that, so the final reward for dealing with Atlantica is an item you'll need to craft the ultimate Keyblade. So yeah, you kinda have to sit through it. Overall, I think this world is just kinda meh. Honestly, part of me just wishes they'd left it as a normal world with Heartless to fight, and that would have fixed anything. So, what other side activities does Kingdom Hearts do to give you when you're not visiting the next Disney World? Well, it's going to differ greatly depending on the version. The PS2 version of Kingdom Hearts 2 was so blah in comparison to the first game. The only things to do were the 100 Acre Wood minigames, Atlantica if you didn't go there during the plot, and finally Jiminy's Journal. The journal now acts like early versions of in-game trophies and achievements in that it will ask you to do all the minigames in each level, like the skateboarding stuff, the odd jobs in Twilight Town, and things of that nature, but now there's requirements that you have to hit when you do them. Aside from this, though, there was nothing. There was only one special boss fight, and big surprise, it's Sephiroth again, and it's not even really hidden. And to that effect, there are no more secret bosses in any of the Disney World. Hell, there's not even a secret boss in the Colosseum! The Colosseum has 4 cups with an alternate higher level section that Hades makes you go through. Though I will say this, the second to last fight in his Hades Paradox Cup is complete awesomeness. It has you fighting Cloud, Tifa, Squall, and Yuffie all at the same time, and it's really cool. I wish the series would lean more into stuff like this too, like having the secret boss fight be against like a really cool Final Fantasy character. The last thing to do in the original was the Synthesis Shop, which works a lot easier than the last time. The more stuff you drop off, it grants you bonuses and access to more creations, and even discounts to make the things you make with less requirements. Still kind of takes forever to do, but it's a heck of a lot less time consuming than it was in the first game. Now before I dive into the Final Mix post-game content, let's talk about the 100 Acre Wood and its content, since that was part of the vanilla game too. So in the first game, you had to find the hidden pages for the book, and your reward was 5 very bland mini-games that definitely stretched the meaning of the word game. I'm looking at you, Pooh Swing! Well, thankfully Kingdom Hearts 2 got the note and fixed up this world quite a bit, making it loads more fun than what was in Kingdom Hearts 1. First up is Blustery Rescue, which is a side-scrolling arcade-style game which has you breaking beehives and collecting honeypots while avoiding hazards to rescue Piglet. You have to constantly be moving and take advantage of these little mini-twisters to break everything on screen to hit the high score. It's simple, but fun. Next up is Honey Slider, which has Sora and Pooh riding on rails, sliding down this path to collect honey orbs. Here, if you hit obstacles, Pooh will fly off and you can't collect anything. So it's a fast-paced game that has you trying to dodge through all the hazards and collect all the orbs as you speed right through. Next is Balloon Bounce, which has Sora bouncing on a balloon to reach a crazy height. The trick is you have to land on the next balloon to continuously gain height, with some different color balloons launching you higher than the others. This one's kind of short, but the challenge comes from trying to line up your jumps and gaining max height. Finally, the last 2 minigames are kind of a bust, but hey, 3 out of 5 ain't bad. The fourth game is the Expedition, which places Sora and Pooh and friends in the skull from the movie Search for Christopher Robin, in which they have to find Pooh. Now there's a few multiple paths to take, but they lead to chests, and if you go straight for Pooh, you can finish this game within like a minute. In fact, the challenge in the journal is to beat it within a minute and a half. The main challenge that comes here is that every couple of steps, bees pop up, making the gang you're walking around with lose their courage, and if the bar depletes completely, they freak out and run around like chickens with their heads cut off until Sora defeats the bees and calms them down. Usually when I play this section, I'll leave the party, grab all the chests, and then go back and get them to get Pooh, since I hate walking around with everyone. Finally, the last game, Honey Pot, feels like a leftover from Kingdom Hearts 1. Here, you just press triangle twice to stop a power and distance meter to send Pooh flying. Takes about 2 seconds, and honestly, it's less of a game than the Pooh Swing was. Overall, though, I like these games a hell of a lot more than what was in the last game. 3 of the games are actually fun, and they more than make up for the lackluster final 2. It's much less of a chore to complete the 100 Acre Wood here in Kingdom Hearts 2 than it was in the first game. Now, Final Mix adds quite a bit more to the post-game, and I'll just say it here, Final Mix is the definitive way to play Kingdom Hearts 2. I know with the HD remasters, this is like the only way that you can play it easily, but seriously, you shouldn't even bother trying to hunt down the original. I already mentioned a few additions like the Limit Form and the Cavern of Remembrance, but there's actually a lot more. First, there's more to the cavern than I mentioned. It's not just an extra dungeon. After you make it to the end, the reward is a battle arena against all of the organization members, only this time they're super more powerful. Beating them grants you status items like defense ups and power ups, and trust me, there's a reason for that. You can even fight all the organization members from Chain of Memories, provided that you beat their absent silhouette fight beforehand. You can come across these in the Disney worlds earlier, and these fights are a cakewalk compared to what's in the cavern. You can also fight against Roxas, since the game added a fight with him in the world that never was, that was just a cutscene in the original. Now, if these fights weren't enough a challenge, the game has another super secret boss fight like the Enigmatic Man from the first game. This time, Disney Castle has a portal for you to enter in order to fight the Lingering Will, one of the mysterious Keyblade wielders from the Secret Ending movie. And holy crap, is this guy a beast! He's got a huge area of attack and so many different moves to dodge. Now, there's actually an easy way to cheese him, which involves a specific setup of abilities on Sora and a rock, but I'll leave that for you to look up and find. To have any normal chances on him, you're going to need those status items from the organization fights. Still not really sure why this fight's linked to Disney Castle, but I guess since Timeless River was here and that was in the past, and I'm guessing this is the past, that's the connection. We also have Mushroom 13 to deal with. So, the Mushroom Heartless from the first Kingdom Hearts were kind of a mixed bag. The white ones required you to stop in progress and hit them with specific spells, which broke the flow of combat. And then there were the Truffles that you had to bounce in the air, which were a struggle with the limited aerial combat of the first game. Needless to say, these Heartless were completely removed from the original version of Kingdom Hearts 2, but are now back as puzzle enemies. Each world has one or two lying around, and it requires a challenge to be completed. Some have you trying to keep them airborne, others have you trying to destroy them all before they respawn, and various other challenges. It's fun to walk around and come across one and see what it's going to ask you to do. Funimix also has another few small additions, such as an alternate costume for Sora and the gang when they're in Christmas Town. Like I said, there are several new cutscenes that were added, and thankfully this time they were voiced compared to the first game where they just had the text. And it had that new Secret Ending video that was totally more badass than the one from the original. Presentation-wise, things are just as great as the last game. The environments are bright and colorful, all the Disney worlds are great, and they look like they were ripped right off the celluloid from whence they came. Yeah, everything's colorful and detailed, though there's one issue with the levels from a presentation stance this time. And while this worked fine in the first game, since they were smaller levels, there's too many instances in Kingdom Hearts 2 where things are open and hollow. For instance, in the Land of Dragons, we arrive at the Emperor's Palace for the parade scene, but it's empty. At the end of the level, we get a crowd in the back, though it's clearly just the one soldier model that they copied and pasted over and over again to emulate a crowd, which looks a hell of a lot worse in the HD version, because you can clearly see it. We then head to Agrabah to see the marketplace, but despite the fact that Aladdin's telling me all about the hustle and bustle of everybody running around here, there's nobody. Although I do like that Donald and Goofy and Sora kind of make this face after he says that, where it's like, they're giving him the face as if to say, what are you talking about, dude? There's nobody here. There's no residents in Halloween Town. Port Royal takes place at night, so not have to deal with anyone walking around, and this happens a bit too often, and this is going to be a big issue until Kingdom Hearts 3, come to think of it. The character models are great, though, and there's a lot less instances of the lip flapping from the first game, so they've animated the mouths a lot more. Voice acting is on point, the Disney cast is on top form, and this time we have more original voice actors joining, like Tate Donovan, Susan Egan, Ming Na, B.D. Wong, Paige O'Hara, among several others joining the cast. There's still a list of replacement, but they do a solid job. None of the actors from Pirates of the Caribbean were able to come because they were filming the third movie at the time, so it's handled by stand-ins, but they do a good job. Granted, they got some pretty heavy voiceover talent, like James Arnold Taylor and Crispin Freeman to voice Jack and Will, so we were in good hands. Probably in regards to the Kingdom Hearts original voice casting this time, everyone's doing a really good job. Sora, Riku, and Kairi's voice actors are just on top as they were in the last games. It's definitely weird hearing them all now hitting puberty, although Riku kind of still sounds the same, I guess because David Gallagher was older, but Hayden and Haley Joel Osment were younger, so they sound dramatically different. Although, I guess not that dramatically different if you played through the remake of Chain of Memories on the PS2, because then you heard Sora's voice drop. Otherwise, it was totally weird to hear this new voice coming out of him. But in regards, I guess, to the new Kingdom Hearts characters, Quentin Flynn is on top form as Axel. I think he does a really great job with limited screen time that he's got. James Patrick Stewart as Xigbar gets a lot to do, more in the extra content that was in Final Mix. He also gets a lot to do in a later game too, as do some of the other organization members. So the ones that don't really get a lot to chew on here get their moments in a later game. But probably the big win that we got from Kingdom Hearts 2's like original character voiceover name drop is we got Christopher Lee, the great Christopher Lee, to voice Ansem. He's only in this game, sadly, because the other games were like spin-offs, and I guess they couldn't either afford him, or he was kind of getting old at that point, so I guess he couldn't come back. So Corey Burton took over, but if you know anything about Corey Burton, you know he's been dubbing his voice for years on the Clone Wars TV show, so it was a perfect fit. But the fact that they got Christopher Lee, to this day, I still don't understand how they got Christopher Lee to agree to this. Like, imagine going to Christopher Lee and explaining to him what Kingdom Hearts is. Yeah, yes, what is the job you're offering me? It's a crossover game between Final Fantasy and Disney. I don't know what any of that is. Could you explain it further? A kid with spiky hair and a Keyblade and Mickey, Donald, Goofy. I'm in. Like, I don't understand how they got him, but they got him, and it proved that the series was good for getting big name talent. And this isn't the last big name we're gonna get as we go through the series, and I'll be sure to point that out in the next couple of games. Overall, like I said, the voice talent really solid. Not a lot of issues, and considering that this was around the time where Square was first doing voice acting, like Kingdom Hearts 1 was out around the same time as Final Fantasy X. Kingdom Hearts didn't really have the hiccup issue that 10 had, and 12 wasn't out yet, where they kind of fixed the quality of the tone of voice acting, but it was right around the same time, so I guess they got a better handle on it. But they really did make a solid presentation for the vocal training and the voice acting, so I think overall, voice acting, another solid experience. In regards to the music, I wasn't sure that Yoko Shimura would be able to top what she did in the first game. I mean, Traverse Town, Hollow Bastion, Dearly Beloved, what was the odds she was going to top all those tracks? Chain of Memories was mostly a rehash of those tracks, thanks in part to the trip down memory lane, but what new pieces she made sounded great, and, well, they sounded okay coming out of the GBA speaker, but were loads better in the remake. Somehow, though, Shimura managed to blow the soundtrack from the first game clear out the water. She starts with a more somber version of Dearly Beloved. That was a blessing to hear come out of my TV 4 years after the first game. The best tracks off the top of my head would have to be Twilight Town's theme, which invokes memories of long past summer days as the sun would set, Roxas's theme, a haunting melancholy piece that fits the character's tragic backstory. The 13 Struggle and Dilemma are some of the best battle tracks for the organization. There's a more bouncy version of Bounce-O-Rama from the first game, and there's a ton more that if I listed it here, we could go on for another hour. Her new music for the battle theme for Christmas Town is awesome, and the Cavern of Remembrance theme is really, really beautiful. Our main theme song this time is Sanctuary, once again provided by Hikaru Ueda, and it's a slower track than Simple and Clean, but it fits. I like the middle techno beat in the background, and ultimately I was happy with this track. Though not nearly as happy as I was with Shimura's instrumental version that plays over the main menu if you sit on it for too long. Overall, I have two sets of feelings for Kingdom Hearts 2. From the original game that I first played and beat within a week back in 2006, and when I first played the Final Mix version years later. I like the original overall, my issues with the plot aside, was a tad let down by some decisions. The hand-holding, the lack of real exploration, no more secrets or trinities, the lack of any real post-game aside from Sephiroth kinda made me feel indifferent. Like I enjoyed my time with it and thought it was great, but something was off. Years later, having played the Final Mix version, all of these concerns disappeared. Well, most of them did, because no amount of new additions was going to fix that issue with the hand-holding stuff to level objectives. Being able to take part in more boss fights, and super challenging ones at that, was great. It made the post-game so much more worth it. Seriously, Final Mix is the best version of the game. I cannot stress that enough. The Final Mix of the first game didn't dramatically change how I felt about the original. Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix adds so much more to the package, and it fixes a lot of what I missed in the original. And it was strange to feel that almost a decade later. Kingdom Hearts 2 is a bigger and better sequel than the first game in so many ways. I'll still place the first game above this one, however, just because of what the first game meant to me and how I experienced it. Kingdom Hearts 1 was a journey that took almost a full year of my life, compared to the 5 days Kingdom Hearts 2 took me. Still, I owe a lot to Kingdom Hearts 2 because after finishing it, I became much more interested in the characters from Final Fantasy VII, and shortly after finishing it, I started Final Fantasy VII for the first time. To talk more about that would totally get off the topic of this review, however. I still think Kingdom Hearts 2 is a great time, mainly because the game went even further with the lore, and at this point cemented why I love the series so much. A lot of people that saw me playing it were confused as to how at 14-year-olds I could play a game that lets you dance alongside the Little Mermaid, but those complaints no longer really affected me at this point because I knew the series was more than that. Hanging around with Aladdin and Captain Jack Sparrow is just a small part of the experience, and then you get to the complicated and true, somewhat convoluted plot, which I love. In some ways, the series is representative of real life. We start off as kids and we surround ourselves with comforts and simplicities just like a Disney movie, and then we grow up and have to deal with a lot more complex situations. Okay, true, most of us as adults are not dealing with our hearts leaving our bodies and the complex notions of heartless people feeling emotions, but you get the parallel I'm trying to make here. By the time Kingdom Hearts 2's credit rolled, I felt finished, and that I was more than content to wait and see what would come next. Kingdom Hearts 1 left me with so many questions as to what would happen, and I spent years getting pumped for the sequel. But after Kingdom Hearts 2, I felt more at peace. Now, the peace didn't last too long, because by the following September, Final Mix was announced, and I became obsessed with wanting to get a Japanese PS2 to play, because of all this cool crap they were getting that we wasn't getting here in the West. I mean, they had all these changes, more bosses, and it came with a remake of Chain of Memories, which, at the time, we didn't know was coming over here to the States. But that year also had another announcement of 3 more Kingdom Hearts games, and while none of them had a 3 in the title, we would just soon learn how important they all were. But we'll have to go into that next time, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next review when we look at Kingdom Hearts 358 over 2 days, which I don't understand why people have such a hard time explaining that title or why they think it's weird. I can think of 100 games with weirder titles than that. Just say it the way we say it, and that's the end of it. Stop making a mountain out of a molehill, you know what I'm saying?